Exclusive. Millionaire follows her nanny after dark. What she discovered haunts her forever. The moon hung low in the velvet sky, casting an eerie glow over the sprawling estate. All was quiet, or so it seemed until a figure slipped into the shadows. A millionaire, renowned for his charm and wealth, had an unusual obsession of fascination with his nanny, Emily. She was just a girl. But that night, in the cold, crisp air, she was something more. Something dangerous. As the clock struck midnight, he crept through the dim halls, his heart racing with a mix of thrill and dread. He couldn't shake the feeling that he would uncover something that would shatter the surface of their seemingly perfect lives. The soft click of the floorboards echoed in the silence. Emily was supposed to be asleep, but was she? What secrets lay coiled in her delicate hands? He paused as he caught sight of the glimmer of light seeping from under a door. Unease twisted in his gut. What was she doing up at this hour? Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to leave her be. But the lure of mystery was too strong. He pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. The sight that met his eyes sent shivers down his spine. Emily stood there, illuminated by flickering candles, an ancient book sprawled open in front of her. Her eyes glimmered in a way he had never seen, an intensity that made his blood run cold. She was murmuring words that seemed to rise and fall like a haunting melody, something otherworldly that floated between the realm of dreams and nightmares. He could feel the weight of ancient history pressing against his chest. What was she involved in? A bone-chilling thought crept into his mind. Was she invoking something that should remain hidden? He couldn't help but feel that he was about to unveil dark secrets meant to stay buried. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. He took a shaky breath and stepped forward, the floor creaking underfoot, piercing the hushed atmosphere. Emily turned, her expression morphing from surprise to mild dread. The air turned thick with unspoken tension, an electric current passing between them. "What are you doing?" he managed to whisper, his voice barely above a hush. Both could feel the heavy, oppressive weight of the unseen. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering violently as if alive. The world outside felt so far away, yet here, in this moment, clarity hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just about him anymore. Who was Emily really? What was she hiding? With sudden decisive energy, he boldly crossed the threshold, not ready for the answers that awaited him. And as the door swung shut behind him, the sense of impending doom settled like a chill in the air. What lay ahead was darker than either of them could ever imagine. Emily's eyes widened with panic, the glow of the candles bathing her face in an unsettling light. Her lips pressed tightly together, seemingly weighing the consequences of his unexpected arrival. She seemed to glance nervously towards the ancient book, as if it held the power to answer every question lingering unspoken in the room. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice shaking like the candle's flame. The ambience shifted, the warmth of curiosity morphed into a frigid aura of fear. I was worried," he stammered, taking a cautious step forward. The air felt electric, crackling with unuttered fears. "You weren't sleeping. What is going on, Emily?" Without replying, she leaned closer to the book, brushing her fingers over its time-worn pages. Strange symbols danced along the edges, weaving a story of their own. He squinted, unable to decipher the complex designs as they seemed to swirl and shift under the candlelight, taunting his inability to understand the depths of her actions. "Don't," she said, panic dripping from her voice. "You shouldn't touch it. You don't know what you're dealing with." The intensity of her gaze pierced through him, and something whispered deep inside, this was no ordinary book. "What do you mean?" A knot tightened in his stomach, a premonition of pure dread settling in. Suddenly, a heavy thud resonated from outside the door. They both froze, adrenaline shooting through his veins. The sound was not just a passing echo, it was the harbinger of something approaching, something ominous. "Stay close to me," she urged, stepping toward him. The divide between their worlds felt insurmountable, yet he could sense the fear coursing through her. He didn't know whether to trust her or run. The thud returned, heavier this time, followed by the sound of low murmurs that filtered through the wooden door, chilling him to the bone. It was as if shadows were gathering, eager to breach the sanctuary of the flickering candles. "What is out there?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just the book that holds power," she said breathlessly. "There are forces, old and dark, that seek to reclaim what was once lost." The fear in her eyes sparked a fire in his chest. "Emily, what did you awaken?" The gravity of her words sank in, wrapping around him like an iron chain. Without warning, the door rattled violently, splintering the quiet sanctuary. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles one by one, plunging them into obscurity. The room felt alive, every shadow now a threat lurking in the dark. He reached for Emily's arm, gripping it tightly. "We need to leave. Now." As he pulled her toward the door, the whirling whispers outside grew louder, almost chanting in a grotesque symphony. They moved as if drawn by invisible strings, a flood of darkness pooling on the other side. "Wait." Emily stopped, her body rigid as she stared toward the door with wide, terrified eyes. "If we leave, we might make it worse." "What are you talking about?" He tugged at her arm, but her gaze was locked ahead. "We have to go." "No," she replied, determination shaking her voice. "We must confront it. It's the only way to stop what I've unleashed." Silence fell, wrapping them in its cold embrace. The whispers turned to desperate howls, echoing around them like a storm gaining strength. Footsteps approached, heavy and slow, as if a predator stalked its prey. The doorknob twisted, and his heart raced, the rush of fear coursing through his body like ice. In that moment, he understood it wasn't just his life on the line, but Emily's fate hung precariously, intertwined with the secrets that lay just beyond the door. And as the door creaked open, they braced themselves for the unspeakable horror that awaited them. The door creaked slowly open, revealing nothing but darkness on the other side. He leaned in, straining to see, but the shadows seemed to breathe alive and malevolent. A shiver raced down his spine, the oppressive weight of fear hanging heavy in the air. "What if it's too late?" he urged, desperation coloring his words. Emily stood beside him, trembling yet resolute. "I can't run." "I want to run," she said softly, but the quiver in her voice betrayed her bravado. Just then, a stifling presence poured into the room, swirling around them. He felt as if it was clawing at his skin, icy fingers wrapping around his throat. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, yet Emily's unwavering gaze anchored him. Suddenly, the candlelight flickered back to life, illuminating a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to pull just beyond the threshold, an umbral fog creeping forward. It coalesced into vague shapes, eyes reflecting a hunger that made his blood run cold. "What are you?" he breathed. The shadows writhed, and the whispers grew deafening, a cacophony of voices chanting a single name. His heart dropped as he heard his own. His body locked in dread as the realization struck, they were calling for him. "No!" Emily screamed, wrenching him back from the threshold, just as a cold, skeletal hand reached through the doorway. Its fingers trembled with hunger, reaching for him while the whispers surged louder, more frantic, pleading. "Emily!" he shouted, panic rising in his chest. "We have to do something." She lifted the ancient book, a fierce look in her eyes. "This is what they want. We have to end this here and now." The shadows paused, as if sensing the gravity of her words. Maybe they understood. Maybe they feared the power resting within the pages of that book. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Read it out loud. We have to bind them, to send them back to where they came from." Her voice surged with urgency. Inwardly, he wrestled with disbelief. How could reciting words from a dusty old book stop the inevitable doom creeping for them? But as the shadows pulsed ceaselessly, he realized they had no choice. "Okay, what do I say?" he asked, his heart hammering. Just follow my lead. Emily took a breath, her body steeling as she began to chant in a language foreign yet captivating. The moment her words echoed through the room, the shadows recoiled, twisting violently as if in pain. He felt a strange energy emanate from the book, a warmth that fought against the encroaching cold. He joined in, trying to match her rhythm. The air filled with an electric buzz, now tinged with echoes of forgotten screams. The shadows began to shrink, pulled back by an unseen force. But with every word they spoke, the whispers grew desperate. "Join us," they cried out, their collective voice dulling the fire of the light. "You cannot escape your destiny." He could feel the seductive pull tugging at his mind, coaxing him to join the dark embrace. "Don't listen to them," Emily shouted, holding his gaze, grounding him in the chaos. As they read faster, a blinding light ignited from the book. "We're so close," he chanted, refusing to let the darkness win as he felt Emily's hand tighten around his. Then, just when it seemed endless, the shadows surged forward in a final, desperate attempt to breach their sanctuary. With one final word, the energy exploded, surging outwards like a shockwave. The shadows howled, shrieking in anguish as they were pulled back into the void. Silence fell abruptly, the tension cut like a thread. The room pulsed gently, as if exhaling after a long-held breath. Did we do it?" he gasped, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Emily stayed still, fear mixing with triumph. "For now, yes. But they'll be back. They always come back." His heart sank at her words, layers of dread unfurling within him. "What do we do next then? How do we stop them for good?" She turned her gaze to the book. "There might be more we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." His stomach dropped. The night was far from over. The real battle had only just begun. The book lay open on the table, its ancient pages fluttering slightly as though the unseen air still held the remnants of the chaos they had just dispelled. Each glance at it sent a ripple of unease through him. "Our names are written in history," Emily murmured, tracing her finger over the glyphs. "What if our actions tonight have tied us to something even darker?" He clenched and unclenched his fists, the adrenaline giving way to a gnawing anxiety. "But we fought them off. We must have some power now, right? We can fight back." But Emily shook her head, her expression sobering. "This isn't just about us. They were waiting. Watching. They'll come again, stronger. We only scratched the surface of whatever this is." "I can't," he started, feeling the weight of his doubt. "I'm not prepared for this." Silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating. The candlelight wavered in response to their uncertainty, the flickers casting erratic shadows on the walls, mirroring their inner turmoil. "Look." Emily pointed towards the window. A dark shape flitted past, barely visible, a wisp against the dim light of the street lamp outside. The world outside their sanctuary felt suddenly menacing, as if the night itself held dark intentions. "Did you see that?" he breathed, his eyes widening. "Do you think they've come back already?" Emily stepped towards the window, peering through the glass. "I don't know, but I want to make sure." She carefully drew the curtain aside, revealing an empty street beneath the pale glow of the moon. But it didn't feel empty, it felt alive. "Maybe we should leave. Just for tonight? We can hide, regroup," he suggested, aching to run. Emily's gaze remained locked beyond the glass. "Running won't solve this. Hiding, it's just a temporary fix. We need to learn what we're dealing with, and we need to do it before they find us again." Her determination flared up again, igniting a flicker of hope within him. "All right then. Let us figure this out together. We need to understand that book." As they returned their attention to the pages, strange symbols glowed, faintly highlighted by a power neither of them could comprehend. Each character felt alive, each mark a minute pulse through the darkened room, whispering secrets just out of reach. "We need to find out what they want with us," he said, fumbling for control. "If they're targeting us, they must need something." Emily seemed to vibrate with the need for knowledge. "I'll check the index, see if there are any references to the shadows we encountered." He watched her turn the pages, the delicate sound of parchment shifting, overpowering the eerie stillness. But beneath that sound, he could hear something else, a faint whisper barely audible, curling around the edges of his mind. "Do you hear that?" he asked, unease creeping back in. Emily paused, glancing up. "Hear what?" "It's like a whisper. It feels wrong." His heart pounded in his chest, the sensation growing stronger, merciless. A new chill crept along his spine, hard and unyielding. "Focus," Emily snapped, excitement slipping into urgency. "We have to figure out how to protect ourselves. No more distractions." They returned to the book, but as she began to read, he noticed the shadows under the table pooling like liquid ink, tightening into a shape. "Emily," he whispered, but it was too late. The shadow surged up and coiled around her feet, the tendril-like form drawing her into the void again. "Run! Get out!" She screamed, but he felt frozen, terror rooting him to the spot. He had to make a choice. But just when he thought his resolve was crumbling, he remembered the warmth they felt while reading together. "I need to find it. I won't stand and watch." He lunged for the book, voice rising with adrenaline. "We can't give in." The room trembled, darkness clawing at him as he started to chant, desperately hoping against hope that it would work again. The shadows shrieked, their fury palpable, ready to engulf them both. What he didn't know was that while they were fighting in one realm, a far deeper connection to the shadows was already awakening, waiting for the right moment to strike. And outside, the wind howled in laughter, carrying the unheeded warnings for their ears alone. Would the whispers ever really stop? How could he fight something that lurked not only outside, but within him? The shadows shrieked, twisting and swirling around him as he chanted, but he felt their resistance. Fear gripped his throat, threatening to choke off the words. Each syllable seemed to goad the darkness, urging it closer to Emily, whose eyes now reflected sheer terror. "Don't stop," she yelled, her voice slicing through the chaos, her determination sparking a flicker of strength inside him. He pushed forward, grounding himself in the moment, every ounce of courage battling against the encroaching void. But the shadows broadened, creeping along the floor, stretching out like malevolent fingers reaching for warmth. The temperature fell as though ice had invaded their sanctuary, wrapping him in a suffocating embrace. The book pulsed beneath his fingertips, its cover hot and cold all at once, alive with a rhythm that mirrored his racing heart. The whispers intensified, wrapping around him insistent, seductive, filled with promises of power, promises that choked on fear. "You can dominate them," they urged. "You hold their fate in your hands." "No," he huffed, shaking his head as if he could physically dislodge their words. "That's not what we want." "Focus," Emily shouted, her voice trembling but unwavering, pulling him back from the brink. She was fighting, too, the shadows still coiling around her legs like a snake, but her spirit burned brighter amid the encroaching gloom. As he spoke louder, the words began to resonate, the air thickening around them. The shadows recoiled, hissing in response, revealing glimpses of something monstrous hidden within their depths. For each word he uttered, he felt Emily's power feed into him. Their connection grew, swelling against the darkness, two people against an unfathomable abyss. But just as he pressed on, a loud crash interrupted them. The entire room shuddered. Books tumbled from the shelves, objects flew off surfaces, crashing down in a cacophony of chaos. "Stay with me," he shouted, desperately grabbing Emily's hand, pulling her toward him. The shadows tightened their grip as if angered by their unity, but the heat from their clasped hands ignited something else, the warmth that felt almost like home. "Let us show them what we can do," she yelled, and he nodded fiercely. Together, they dove deeper into the chant, voices harmonizing, weaving a spell that stretched through the darkness, drawing light from the void. But with the surge of energy, a powerful gust burst through the window, shattering glass and swirling paper. He could see shadows flickering in person now, shadows that formed grotesque faces, eyes glowing with hatred and hunger. They loomed in the room, specters from a nightmare brought to life. "Look out!" Emily screamed as one lunged towards them, a blur of blackness that radiated malice. Instinct kicked in. He stepped forward, pushing Emily behind him. The words tumbled from his lips like an incantation of defiance. The obscenity of the shadows rushed at him, and for one split second, he thought of surrender, a haunting image of giving in, of losing himself completely. But then, deep within, he pulled strength from the warmth of their bond and shouted, "No. You can't have us." With a surge of energy, the chant erupted from him, bright light bursting from the book as it illuminated the dark. It felt as if time paused, as if they stood at the eye of a storm. The shadow twisted, shrieking in agony. The room shook as the light expanded, claiming territory, pushing back against the darkness. The malevolence hissed, receding. But in its retreat, a deep, ominous silence descended. And then he realized. The book quivered in his grasp, radiating heat and making his skin tingle. The shadows were not gone. They retreated, whispering dark promises. "You may have one today," they hissed. "But the deeper shadows are close." So close, they exchanged glances, panic settling but mingled with hope. "What now?" He breathed, chest heaving. Emily's face was drawn, but her eyes sparkled with resolve. "We need to find a way to truly uncover what this all means, and fast." Little did they know that something was already poised to strike from the inside, a link forged by victory, connecting them to the very shadows they faced. Outside, the wind howled again, a low, foreboding sound, murmuring secrets that only they could hear. What was left to discover in the darkness? Was this fight truly over, or merely just beginning? The tension in the air thickened as they took a moment to catch their breath, the aftermath of their encounter wrapping around them like a heavy fog. Emily's eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of the shadows they had just repelled. "Did you feel that?" she finally asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. He nodded, still clutching the book like a lifeline. "It's like they're waiting, like they'll come back stronger." The shadows may have retreated, but a gnawing dread settled deep in his gut. He felt their presence lingering, a cold brush over his skin, that gnawing sensation of something unseen slithering just out of reach. Suddenly, a creaking sound echoed from the far end of the room. They spun around, hearts racing. Emily stepped forward, bravely peering into the darkness that had just been illuminated, a defiant light still sputtering against the encroaching blackness. "What was that?" she breathed, glancing back at him, fear mingling with determination in her gaze. "I don't know," he replied, inching closer to her. The warmth of their bond still crackled in the air between them, almost tangible, but it felt fragile against the chilling backdrop. Another creak, louder this time. It reverberated like a whisper of doom. Something was moving in the shadows, something more than just the remnants of their spectral attackers. "Stay close," he warned, tightening his grip on her hand. They moved cautiously toward the sound, the light from the book casting long, twisting shadows on the walls that danced mockingly around them. "Open it," Emily urged, her voice steadier than before, but her eyes betrayed her unease. She nodded at the book, its cover pulsating with the energy they had unleashed. He hesitated. What if it reveals something worse? Emily's resolve hardened. What if it shows us how to stop this? We can't keep running. Steeling himself, he flipped open the tome. Pages turned quickly past faded illustrations, dark creatures, symbols of fear, spells of illumination. The words glowed momentarily, feeding off the fear in the room like a parasitic entity eager for nourishment. "Wait," Emily gasped, pointing at an illustration that seemed to breathe a swirling mass of energy, shadowy tendrils stretching out like claws. "That? We've seen that before." He felt the blood drain from his face. It was a depiction of the monstrous faces they'd glimpsed during the chaos, an echo of the terrifying shadows that had lunged at them. "It looks like a gate," he stammered. "A gate to what?" Before he could respond, the air grew heavy. The shadows shimmered, and they realized with dismay that the book had begun to vibrate violently in his hands, drawing power from the darkness creeping back into the room. "Something is coming," he said, dread slicing through him. "Get ready." Emily's voice rang out, laced with urgency as her fierce spirit began to blaze once more. Just then, a rush of air swept through the room, howling like a banshee. The shadows twisted and writhed, forming a whirlpool of darkness that spiraled toward the open book, an insatiable entity hungry for their fear. The walls began to tremble, knickknacks rattling dangerously on the shelves. With fiendish delight, the shadows whispered promises, a chorus of voices rising ominously around them. You think you can defeat us? You are merely pawns, mere sparks in the grand design. Shut up, he shouted, throwing the book into the darkness. But Emily's hand caught his arm, and her eyes held a mix of fear and admiration. Together, we can fight back. Remember the chant, she urged, pulling him closer. With a flick of her wrist, she ignited the air with flickering light, summoning a warmth that surged between them like a golden lifeline. He felt the connection deepen, the words echoing in his mind once more, the power surging through him like fire. Now, she shouted, and they began to chant as the darkness lunged forward, hungry and vengeful. But the shadows were not just mere entities, they pulsated with a terrible truth. As they fought back, a horrifying realization dawned on him. What if the darkness had always been intertwined with them? What if every shadow they faced was a reflection of their own fears? In the chaos, the shadows coiled tighter, their howls merging with their chant, feeding off doubt. You cannot escape what you are, they screamed. As the light surged and the truth struck, he understood too late. Often it isn't the darkest shadows outside that haunt the soul, but the ones that reside deep within. But before he could act, the swirling shadows shifted, revealing their most grotesque form, yet a glimmer of distorted faces, each etched with pain and regret. Do you see? They taunted, pushing the limits of his courage. Everything hung in the balance. Would they stand resolute against their own darkness, or would they be consumed? And in that pivotal moment of choice, a chilling voice resonated behind them. Are you ready for the true battle? As the shadows began to close in, he knew this was just the beginning. Whatever lay on the other side of the gate was now waiting for them. What would they find when they stepped into the abyss? Would they conquer the darkness, or would they become lost within it? As the shadows swirled closer, his heart pounded against his ribs, each thud a reminder that time was slipping away. The chilling voices tortured them, their mocking laughter echoing off the walls. He glanced at Emily, her eyes wide, reflecting both fear and an unwavering determination. Let us do this, Emily yelled, and with a mighty burst of courage, she stepped forward, her hands raised, summoning that flickering light again. The brightness surged, pushing back the darkness momentarily and allowing them to see the grotesque figures lurking just beyond the reach of the glow. The grotesque faces shimmered again, a legion of memories, once buried, clawing their way to the surface. Each face bore a story, a scar, a flicker of pain that resonated deep within him. Once he thought he had forgotten. Fight it, Emily urged, breaking through the din of shadows. These are just echoes of past fears. They can't break us. Yet doubt crept in, etching cold fingers around his resolve. What if they're right, he thought, feeling the weight of their presence, a misty, suffocating shroud tightening around his throat. Focus. Emily's voice pierced through the chaos as she squeezed his hand tighter. Repeat after me. They spoke the chant in unison, each word tethering them together against the tide of despair. The light intensified, bursting forth like a supernova, sending shockwaves that rippled through the shadows. The figures recoiled but did not disappear, their faces snarling and hissing at their resistance. Enough, one of the shadows hissed, its voice slithering across the floor like a snake. You've no idea what you're up against. What we face is nothing compared to our spirits, Emily countered, her voice a clarion call, ringing with fierce bravery. As the chanting grew louder, the shadows shifted, they twisted and turned, merging into one massive entity that towered over them, dark and fierce, with eyes that burned like coals. Does it not terrify you? To face the ghosts of your own making? It jeered, its voice echoing ominously in the constricting space between them. The chill seeped deeper, chilling him to the bone as the truth of their words sank in. A flicker of doubt jumped into his mind. What if their power came from their unfulfilled fears? What if they were the ones trapped in their own pasts, forever haunted by choices they wished they had made differently? Don't listen, Emily shouted, breaking through his spiraling thoughts. We're more than our fears. We're stronger together. With renewed fervor, he focused back on her, admiration and love washing over him. Together they said the words again, louder this time, forcing the darkness to retreat step by step as the oppressive weight began to lift. But as the shadows shrank, they revealed a door, a gleaming silver gate, almost inviting. It stood there, glinting in the surge of light, yet radiated an unease that prickled his skin. What is that? He whispered, pointing toward the shimmering portal barely visible behind the receding darkness. It's the gate, Emily said, her eyes locking onto it with an intensity that mirrored his fear. Where it all began. We must confront it. But what if it leads to our destruction? He questioned, dread creeping back into his heart as uncertainty clawed its way back. Or it could be our salvation, Emily replied, but doubt seeped into her tone, chipping away at her confidence. As they stood on the precipice, shadows shrieking as if sensing their fear, time stretched to an agonizing crawl. A choice lay before them, to turn back into the familiar darkness of their lives or step into the uncertain embrace of the unknown. Together? He asked, glancing back at her, the question purely unspoken, a bond that could either shatter or strengthen them. She nodded, her expression fierce but soft. Always. With hands entwined, they faced the gate together. What waited beyond could either be the end of their fears or the beginning of a fate darker than they could fathom. At that moment, as they took a collective breath, the ground trembled beneath them, and the shadows erupted in shrieks of anger, racing one final time to consume them. Would they find the strength to break through the gate, or would they be dragged back into the abyss, forever lost to the darkness? As they took that fateful step towards the silver gate, the air around them grew thick, electric with tension. Every heartbeat seemed to synchronize with the pounding of the shadows, drowning out the chaotic noise around them. Emily squeezed his hand, her grip a lifeline, anchoring him as the ground shook violently beneath them. "Now!" she shouted, and together they lunged forward, forcing themselves through the gate. In an instant, everything changed. They were swallowed by a blinding light that scorched their eyes, the shadows retreating into howling echoes that faded into silence. When the brightness subsided, they found themselves standing on a deserted street, dimly lit by flickering streetlights. The air was alive with a strange stillness, as if the world was holding its breath. "What is this place?" he asked, looking around, confusion bleeding into his voice. I don't know," Emily murmured, stepping closer to him. The street stretched endlessly in both directions, lined with old, crumbling buildings that looked like they hadn't even touched in decades. "It feels familiar, yet wrong." Suddenly, a cold breeze swept by, tugging at their clothes like icy fingers. Shadows sprawled along the edges of the light, creeping ever closer. He felt his pulse quicken again, the weight of dread returning as memories flickered at the corners of his mind, dark memories he buried under layers of denial. "Stay close," he urged, although he wasn't sure if it was for Emily's safety or his own. As they moved forward cautiously, he caught sight of a figure in the distance, standing alone in the flickering light. The silhouette looked familiar, but it sent chills racing down his spine. Emily noticed too, stepping back slightly, her eyes wide with recognition. "Is that?" she stammered, voice trembling. "Kate?" he replied, his breath hitching as realization dawned on him. It was his sister, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes sunken and hollow. She stood still, staring at them with a mixture of longing and despair. "Help me," Kate said, her voice barely above a whisper, but echoing in the silence that enveloped them. "What happened to her?" Emily whispered, fear gripping her. "I thought she was gone," he choked, struggling to comprehend the sight before him. "What did I do?" "Don't listen, we need to go," Emily insisted, tugging at his arm. Yet, a magnetic pull yanked him forward, ignorant of the shadows creeping back, growing impatient. "Please, you have to save me." Kate's eyes glistened with tears that reflected the dim light. The anguish etched deep on her face cut through him like a knife. "Kate, I'm here. I'll help you," he called, a strange desperation bubbling up inside him. But even as he spoke, the shadows hissed, writhing behind him, eager to pull him back into their grip. "Don't trust her," Emily cried out, but the sound seemed dulled, overshadowed by the chorus of whispers growing ever louder. "This place is a trap." He hesitated, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Was this the moment to confront his past? The shadows? Or would it only lead to more pain? Suddenly, Kate reached out her hand, pleading. "You have to come closer. It's the only way." A scream erupted from the shadows, as if enraged by his wavering resolve. The world around them started to spin, the buildings warping into grotesque shapes as the echoes of the past clawed their way back. "Run!" Emily shouted, pulling him backward. But something in his heart clung to that glimmer of hope, that maybe he could save her or destroy them all in the process. As they stumbled back, desperately trying to find their escape, the shadows began to converge, swirling with fury. Would they break free from this haunted reality, or would they be enveloped by the very fears that haunted their souls? The answer lay just beyond the swirling chaos, and he felt his heart race. As he turned his gaze back toward Kate, the decision loomed terrifyingly close. Which path would he take, and what price would it hold? What awaited them in the depths of this darkness was yet to be revealed. The shadows lunged at them, closing in with a snarl that echoed through the empty street. Fear slipped under his skin, prickling with electricity as he stumbled alongside Emily, her grip like an iron vice. They rushed away from the vision of his sister, each step feeling dangerously heavy, as if they were pulling a weight that threatened to drag them both down. "What is wrong with her?" he gasped, not daring to look back, his breath coming in ragged bursts. Memories of laughter and warmth collided with this haunting figure, leaving him dizzy. "I don't know, but we can't stay," Emily urged, her voice strained but resolute. They pressed onward, but the ground beneath them seemed to twist, each step jarring and unstable, warping the world around them. As they fled, the streetlights flickered ominously, illuminating the peeling paint and broken windows that whispered secrets of pain and despair. Dark figures emerged from the alleyways, lurking in the periphery, their eyes glowing with malicious intent. Shadows morphed into grotesque shapes, curling and curling like smoke, taunting them with ghostly laughter. "Keep moving," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. But something about the specters, their misery mirrored in the walls, made him glance back. Kate stood at the edge of the light, clutching her throat, her lips moving but no sound escaping. She looked so small, so desperate. "Don't you dare!" Emily screamed, pulling at him. But a voice inside his head drowned out her warning, a siren song luring him closer. "Just help me," Kate cried again, and it felt like a knife slicing through his resolve. He edged closer, heart pounding, the shadows closing in tighter, pressing against his back. "Stop. She's not real," Emily shouted, her fear morphing into anger. It was as if each plea from Kate tore at his sanity, fraying the string of logic that held him steady. But still, he couldn't help it. He felt a magnetic pull, a connection spanning years of guilt and regret. "Please, brother," Kate's voice wrapped around him, thick with anguish. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement where her shadow danced. A broken smile twisted her lips, and suddenly, the warmth he had once known with her vanished. The truth crashed into him like a wave. This was not the sister he loved. This was a husk filled with darkness. "No!" he shouted, eyes wide with horror. The shadows seized the opening, pulling at him fiercely. He felt himself being yanked away from Emily, away from reality, and into the abyss. "Help!" Emily's voice pierced through the din, desperate and raw. She was struggling, fighting against a force he couldn't see, the shadows coiling around her like snakes. "Emily!" he cried out, stretching his hand toward her. The sight of her fear became his own terror, igniting a surge of strength. Why couldn't he let Kate go? "I'm coming," he shouted, but as he stepped toward Emily, a sharp pain shot through his side, searing and blinding, as the shadows recognized his defiance. "No!" Emily screamed, and he saw terror etched deep into her features as shadows slid dangerously close to her neck. Panic flooded him, and he lunged, but the world tilted sideways, his feet no longer grounded. "Yes," Kate's voice whispered in a chilling harmony with the shadows. "Yes, come to me, get away from her." He roared, feeling the surge of fear morph into something primal. He shoved against the darkness, fighting against every ounce of despair clawing at his mind. He could not lose Emily, too. With a wild heart and a throat dry with dread, he propelled himself through the swirling chaos. But just as he thought he could reach Emily, a gale of shadow swept through, pulling both of them toward the light of Kate. "Now it's time to choose," the whispering shadows taunted, their hissing filling the air with a dreadful certainty. Would he save Emily, the one who fought beside him, or would he chase after the memory of a sister lost to the dark? As the ground sucked him closer to the abyss, the choice hung heavy in the air, electric with consequence. The decision loomed, and just behind him, the shadows shifted, revealing a glimpse of something beyond, a truth too horrifying to face. What lay ahead was a revelation that could shatter them all. He was trapped. Time hung in the balance, and as he faced the growing chaos, a shiver of understanding washed over him. The whispers from the shadows intertwined with the memories of Kate, wrapping tight around his heart like a noose. "Enough!" he suddenly roared, leveling his gaze at the shadowy forms surrounding them. "You don't own me. You don't own us." The shadows surged forward in response, as if his defiance had ignited an untamed rage. Each shadow twisted and morphed into countless faces, some familiar, some never seen before, but they were all echoes of fear. A cacophony of voices filled the air, each cry mingling with chilling laughter. "You think you can resist your past? That you can escape the darkness?" They hissed, their breath cold and sour, but then a flicker of warmth erupted within him. It was the memory of Emily's strong grip, her unwavering gaze. He forced that thought to the forefront, let it anchor him. He could feel her courage pulsating against him, knitting together the resolve he had almost lost. "We all have darkness," he proclaimed, "but we are more than our fears." Emily stepped closer, her spirit glowing like a beacon against the tide of chaos. "Together!" she shouted, and the sound filled him with fire. The shadows shrieked in fury, but their hold on him loosened slightly. Fueled by a dawning understanding, he clutched Emily's hand tighter, the warmth igniting their power. "We fight for each other." With a roar that echoed across the street, he stepped forward, dragging Emily with him, lunging into the chaos. "No," he declared. "You will not win today." The light from the book surged between them like a tidal wave, reverberating against the darkness. The shadows recoiled, their laughter morphing into frantic cries as they writhed beneath the onslaught of light. "How dare you!" He and Emily began to chant, voices united as they filled the air with power. The strength flowed, words spilling from their lips like fire igniting in the dark. The shadows twisted, folding in on themselves as the radiant light grew, each syllable pushing them back. "We choose light. We choose hope. We are not your puppets." As they chanted, he felt the weight of the past lifting. Memories of Kate coiled tightly around his heart began to fade, not erased, but transformed. He was no longer a prisoner of them, they were just part of the tapestry of who he was. "Let her go," he shouted, and with that, the shadows screamed in agony, swirling around them like a tempest, desperate to escape the light that was forcing them backward. "Stay strong," Emily urged, her voice cutting through the swirling chaos. He could feel her resolve invigorating him, lending him strength. Then there was a shuddering sound as the shadows collided, a break in their collective mockery. For the first time, they faltered. As the last chant echoed between them, the air exploded. A shockwave of brilliant light pushed through the shadows held in defiance, their forms splintering, writhing. They lunged through the renewed gap and found themselves standing in silent brilliance, the oppressive dread lifting as quickly as it had come. The shadows dissipated into cinders, reducing to nothingness before them. Breathing hard, he turned to Emily. "Did we win?" he asked, uncertain. "Maybe for now," she replied, her eyes shining though exhaustion lingered in her expression. "But the darkness doesn't truly end. It's a part of us, we just have to learn to control it." As the midnight air began to cool around them, he nodded slowly. They had faced their fears, had triumphed against the darkness. But it was clear, this battle was not the end. Hand in hand, they surveyed the now quiet street, the shadows no longer lurking. The moon cast its soft glow on their faces, illuminating their shared relief. He took a deep breath, feeling lighter, the weight of regret lingering but no longer suffocating him. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together, right?" "Yes," Emily beamed, her warmth radiating through him. "Always." As they began to walk forward, he felt the shadows retreating further into the deep recesses of his mind. Together, they would build new memories, new strength. Each step felt purposeful, and inside him, hope began to blossom like the dawn chasing away night. But just as they turned the corner, a soft breeze whispered by, carrying with it a faint echo of laughter, a reminder that while they had conquered this struggle, the darkness always awaited its next opportunity. Still, hand in hand, they stepped boldly into the promise of a new day, and as they walked into the horizon, he felt ready for anything. But one thing was certain, the darkness might return, but together, they would always find the strength to fight it. Now, before we wrap this up, listen closely. This is the moment to secure your place in our amazing community. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right this second. Your support feeds the algorithm and helps us grow, and I want you to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion. What do you think? What's next for our heroes? Now, you must share this video with at least 5 friends. They need to see this conclusion. Everyone deserves to know the truth about fighting their own shadows. Don't wait even one more second. Your love and support keeps the stories alive.